What would you do if you walked in and saw your spouse teaching explicit things to your toddler? Would you shout, run, pretend you didn't hear it? Kelvin was born in the rugged, ever bustling streets of Lagos. Life there wasn't coated in sugar or honey. His parents, Sandra, a soft spoken woman with kind eyes, and Ignatius, a quiet but determined man, barely had enough to feed themselves, let alone live in a decent environment. But something changed the moment Kelvin arrived. Before his birth, Sandra's little provision shop stood like a ghost in the neighborhood. Days would pass without a single customer. She would sit on her wooden stool, watching the street and praying silently. Then, almost like a whispered blessing from the gods, everything shifted. Within weeks of Kelvin's birth, customers started flowing in. People she'd never seen before began buying in bulk. Her shelves emptied daily. At first, she thought it was luck, but then it didn't stop. She knew deep down it was him, Kelvin, her little miracle. Meanwhile, Ignatius, who had chased a massive government contract like a thirsty man chased water in the desert, finally received a call. The contract, one he had almost given up on, was his just like that. It felt supernatural. They called Kelvin their good luck child. He became the heartbeat of their family. Money flowed, joy bloomed. They moved out of the slums and rented a proper apartment. Even a small balcony that Sandra adorned with flowers. Ignatius bought her a large store, the kind that made people look twice. Bright light, well-arranged goods. It looked more like a boutique supermarket than a regular shop. But success came with whispers. Something no dey pure, the neighbors would say. Dem don go collect money from one baba for village. Yet Sandra didn't care. Kelvin was turning 3, and Sandra was determined to throw a party worthy of royalty. She invited everyone, family, friends, and even the local orphanage children. The compound buzzed with excitement. Loud music filled the air. Pots of jollof rice, fried chicken, and small chops lined the tables. Drinks flowed like river. Laughter bounced off the walls. Kelvin ran around in excitement. His smile could melt stone. But amidst the celebration, Ignatius sat in a quiet corner under the mango tree, his eyes glued to his phone. His fingers moved rapidly, thumbs dancing, a sly smile creeping across his face now and then. Sandra noticed. At first, she thought maybe it was work. After all, he had been complaining about how demanding his new position had become. But this didn't feel like stress. This felt like distraction. He hadn't even joined them to cut the birthday cake. Not one picture with his son. Not a glance. Sandra's heart twisted, anger itched beneath her skin, but she swallowed it. This wasn't the time to make a scene. One by one, guests began to leave. She thanked them warmly, her smile genuine but her mind elsewhere. Then she glanced over to the tree. The spot where Ignatius had been seated was now empty. Her chest tightened. She turned to her friend Choma standing nearby. "Please hold Kelvin for me," she said calmly, handing over the now sleepy child. Then she walked briskly into the house, her eyes scanning every room, but it was empty. She grabbed her phone and called him. No answer. She dialed again and again. Still nothing. Her fingers shook slightly, trying not to panic. She returned to the compound and quietly joined the others in packing up. Later that night, she baited Kelvin, who was already nodding off. His little body sagged with exhaustion as she tucked him into bed. She sat by his side for a moment, brushing his head back, the tension in her chest refusing to ease. He had been acting distant for a while now. The clock chimed 11, loud and clear. Was he with another woman? Was something wrong? Or was she simply losing her mind? That day was supposed to be his off day. He had promised no work, no meetings, just them. Hours passed. She couldn't sleep, so she curled up on the living room couch instead, one leg hanging off, her arm wrapped around the throw pillow as though it could comfort her. Then, at 12 a.m., her phone beeped. A message from Ignatius. Emergency came up at the office. I will be home late tonight. She stared at the screen. That was it. No apology, no explanation. She immediately dialed his number, but it went off as soon as it rang. She let out a deep sigh, maybe of relief. Morning came too fast. Sandra got up, dressed Kelvin, and they went to the shop. Business was good as usual, but her mind was on the customers. Each time the door chime rang, her eyes darted towards it, hoping maybe, just maybe, Ignatius would walk in and surprise her. One quiet evening, Ignatius was seated on the couch watching football, his eyes focused on the screen, lost in a world where only goals mattered. Sandra sat beside him, calm but trembling inside. "Baby," she said gently. He nodded, eyes still glued to the screen. "I'm listening." She paused, chose her words carefully. "You know, it's been a while since you started this contract, but I must say I'm grateful. The turnaround in our lives, it had been a blessing." But she hesitated, searching his face. "I cannot deny that you have changed. You no longer spend time with me or Kelvin, and you no longer touch me, and I like to know what you want to do about it." Silence. She called again. "Baby," no response. Ignatius, her voice was firm now. Still nothing. She leaned forward and raised her voice. "Ignatius!" His head turned slowly, eyes sharp and unsettling. "What did you just call me?" he asked, his tone chilling. "Ignatius, is that not your name?" His palm landed across her cheek so fast. She barely saw it coming. Her head snapped to the side. Pain exploded in her jaw. "That's a lesson for tomorrow," he growled. "Try that again and you will know I am not your mate." Sandra stared at him, stunned. "What is wrong with you? I was just talking and you slapped me." He stood, chest rising and falling. "If you try this again, I swear I will send you back to your father's house to go and learn some manners." He snatched his car keys, stormed out and slammed the door hard. Sandra stood frozen, hand on her face, confusion and pain in her eyes. She whispered to herself, "What have I done to deserve this?" Her voice cracked. "My husband has changed. He has changed a lot. They have been married for 7 years. 7 years! Never once had he raised his hands at her." She sat back on the couch, trying to make sense of it. Maybe his team lost the match. Maybe I should have waited for a better time. Maybe I provoked him. She picked up her phone and started calling him, not to shout, but to ask for his forgiveness, to fix it. But again, his phone was off. He didn't return home that night or the next. A week passed. Sandra didn't know who to ask anymore. His friends all denied knowing where he was. One even joked maybe he's on a work trip to Pluto. During this time, Sandra poured all her love into Kelvin. She laughed with him, sang with him, played with him. These were the moments she wished Ignatius would share, but he was always busy. With what? She didn't know. One day, her sister Cynthia came visiting. After lunch, she leaned in with a heavy voice. "Sandra, are you sure Ignatius is working? Or he's working?" Sandra blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, don't you think he's cheating?" Sandra's face hardened. "No, I trust my husband. His work is just demanding, that's all." Cynthia raised her hands in surrender. "Okay, if you say so." Sandra didn't want to believe it. She refused to. That would shatter everything. But the signs were undeniable. The beatings became frequent, unprovoked. One night, he beat her so badly over her asking why he came home late that she couldn't walk straight for 2 days. If she raised her voice, he would tell her to pick pin like a primary school child, and she would obey. Every time he hit her, she would still beg him to stop, beg him to stay. and begged him to love her again. Her family tried everything, took her away, tried to keep her from going back, but she always returned. Once, when they had him arrested, Sandra bailed him out, and he beat her again. Her excuse, "I don't want to be mocked for leaving my husband's house." She began praying, fasting, crying out to God. She took his clothes and shoes to church, used them as points of contact. "Touch his heart, Lord. Bring back my husband." But it felt like the demons the pastor cast out in church followed her home and possessed her husband. He became worse. Sandra sat on her couch in her living room, her arms wrapped around herself. She stared into nothing, tears dry, heart heavy. She whispered, "How did we get here?" A man she once loved with every fiber of her being now made her tremble when he entered the room. She looked down the hallway where Kelvin was playing with his toy car, babbling happily. The little boy, her only light. She touched her cheek where the last slap had landed and whispered again, "He has changed." The night was still. The only sound was the tickling wall clock. Sandra sat curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when she heard tiny footsteps. Out came 4-year-old Kelvin, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep. "Kelvin, baby, what's wrong?" she asked gently, her voice laced with concern. "Mommy, I am Honey," he said, his voice innocent, unaware of the weight of his words. Sandra froze. "What?" she gasped, eyes wide. "Where did you hear that from?" she asked, again, trying not to startle him. "From Daddy," he said with a nod. Her throat tightened instantly. Her chest ached like someone had just ripped something out of it. But she didn't want to yell. Not at him. She scooped him up, pressing him against her chest. "Kelvin, baby, don't say that to anyone again, okay? That word, it's not for children." "I will talk to Daddy about it," she whispered, brushing his hair gently. He nodded, already dozing in her arms. She helped him to the toilet and then tucked him back into bed. The moment she shut his door, she broke down. Her knees hit the floor. She cried. But the pain wasn't just from the word. It was from the truth staring at her like an open wound, and yet, like a fool, she tried to convince herself. Maybe he heard it from a movie or my phone while he was playing games. She lied to herself, her chest still burned. Ignatius was sitting comfortably on the couch. Sandra had gone to the market. He held his phone to his ear and grinned. "Hello, baby. I feel so horny," he said playfully. The voice on the other side giggled. "I'm out of town at the moment, but I promise I will make it up to you, Daddy." Just then, Kelvin came out, dragging his toy truck behind him. "Daddy, what does that mean?" he asked, tilting his head curiously. "You mean honey?" Ignatius asked casually, not realizing the bomb he was dropping. "It's when a man wants to release," he answered, smirking. "What is release, Daddy?" Kelvin asked, scratching his head. Before he could reply, Sandra walked in. She stood there, bag still in her hand, heart racing. She heard every word. "So you are the one teaching our son this nonsense. How shameless can you be?" she barked. Ignatius didn't let her finish. As always, his anger flared instantly. He rose and bam! He slapped her with the force of Mike Tyson. She stumbled back, her hands to her face. "He is my son, and I will teach him what I want. He will learn it eventually. Why not now?" he shouted. She was shaking, but he didn't care. He walked away, leaving her crumpled on the ground, holding herself, crying. Her heart had already been broken, but now it was shattered. Not just because of the cheating, but because it was now affecting her child. "Cassia," he said, licking his lips slowly as he laid shirtless on the bed. "When will you leave your wife?" she asked, leaning closer, running her fingers across his chest. "You told me you would divorce her, so what's going on?" "Don't worry, baby," he replied with a smug grin. "She will live by herself. Sandra is too headstrong. I am frustrating her on purpose. When the divorce papers come, she will sign them like a scared little chicken." They both laughed wickedly. "But now you need to take care of me. I have been a good daddy," he said, leaning in to kiss her neck. Days passed. Ignatius came home one evening with a strange calmness. No shouting, no violence, just silence. Sandra noticed it at first. She was cautious, but he didn't pick a fight, didn't beat her. She began to hope maybe he had changed. Maybe God had answered my prayers. She thanked God for his revival. Saturday evening came. She left Kelvin at home with him and headed to her shop. When she returned, she was met with silence. Ignatius or Kelvin were not at home. She checked around the house, but nothing. Maybe they went for a walk, she told herself. She cooked, cleaned, and waited. By 9 p.m., nothing. By midnight, no call. She picked up her phone and dialed, no answer. She called again and again, still nothing. By 2 a.m., her heart was in her mouth. She called Cynthia, her sister, who picked up on the first ring. Within minutes, Cynthia was at the house. The two women gave Ignatius over 500 missed calls. Nothing. Early morning, Ignatius finally returned. Sandra rushed to him, her face pale. "Where is Kelvin?" she asked, her eyes darting between him and his car. He frowned. "What kind of question is that? I left him with you yesterday. I have been calling all night. Where is he?" He yawned. "I thought you took him." "Took him where?" she screamed. The gate was locked, so where could he go? Panic. Chaos. With Cynthia's help, they searched the house, checked cupboards, under the bed, even the doghouse outside. Nothing. Hot tears ran down Sandra's face as she walked onto the street, asking every neighbor, every Okada rider. Everywhere she went, dead end. The police were called. The case was reported. Kelvin's face went on TV, on radio, on flyers. Days passed. Then a week. Sandra stopped eating. She stopped bathing. She couldn't go to her shop. She couldn't even cry anymore. Her only prayer was, "Let my son come back and call me mommy again." Cynthia, seeing her sister falling apart, packed a small bag and took Sandra back to their family house. Their mother, her eyes full of tears, held Sandra's hands. "This man is not for you. He was never for you. Sign the divorce, Sandra." Sandra, broken and tired, finally nodded. She contacted a lawyer. The papers were drawn. Through it all, Ignatius never called, not even once. Sandra walked into the house that once held her dreams, now just a ghost filled with betrayal. Her steps were firm and her face expressionless. She clutched the envelope containing the divorce papers in her hand. She didn't flinch. She had cried enough. Ignatius was sitting on the couch with his mistress, Cassia. Their legs were entangled like vines. Sandra approached silently, stopping just a few feet away. "Ignatius," she said, "sign these." Without even looking at her or the papers, he reached for the pen and scribbled his signature. Done, just like that. He immediately turned to Cassia and locked his lips with hers, like Sandra didn't exist. Now you can finally have me to yourself," he moaned into Cassia's ear. Sandra's face twisted in disgust. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She turned and walked out of the house, slow, deliberate steps, like she was leaving a tomb. A week after the divorce, Sandra received an unexpected call from a neighbor who still lived near their old house. "Sandra," the voice said softly, "please, I need to talk to you. It's about Kelvin." Her heart skipped. They agreed to meet in a public garden. "I am so sorry about your missing son," the woman began. "I heard what happened, but I want to tell you something that's been bothering me." Sandra leaned forward, listening intently, her hands trembling slightly. "I saw your husband with Kelvin on the day he went missing. I was visiting my boyfriend at White Residence Estate. Ignatius had just gotten down from the car. We greeted briefly and then I left. But I swear, Kelvin was still in the car when he walked into that building. Sandra's stomach twisted. Are you sure? I can't say what happened after that, but I thought you should know. Sandra stood up slowly, thanked her and left without another word, her mind already racing. Sandra wasted no time. She went straight to the police. After filing a report, a license was granted to view the CCTV footage from White Resident Estate. A kind officer at the station helped her. Her hands were cold. Her heart was loud. The footage began. There it was, Ignatius parking the car. Kelvin visible through the window, playing with something on his lap. Ignatius got down, walked into the building. Time ticked. Hours passed, night came. No sign of Ignatius. Sandra's nails dug into her palm. Then morning came. Ignatius returned. His face was pale immediately he opened his car. His body jittery, his eyes darting left and right, as it reflected horror. He entered into the car and shut the door, then drove off, his hands visibly shaking. Sandra broke down. She fell to her knees right there on the floor, sobbing. Her baby, her sunshine Kelvin was gone. Her husband had discarded his body. The officer gently put her up. Madam, Kelvin will get justice. Ignatius was invited to the station. He denied everything, but when the footage was shown, his smirk faded, but not for long. The next day, the officer handling the case was settled. The case was wiped off like chalk on a blackboard. Everywhere Sandra went, to lawyers, media houses, child rights groups, door closed in her face. I'm sorry, madam, this case is closed. She cried to her mother. Mama, what do I do? This man killed my child. Her mother looked her straight in the eye and said, Then we must take it to the higher court, the one no man can bribe. Sandra traveled to her village. It was quiet and airy. The air felt thick. That night, exactly 12 a.m., under a full moon, she stood in her mother's compound, naked, trembling but determined. Her left hand lifted her breast. Her right hand gripped a handful of earth. She looked into the moon and whispered the words her mother had taught her, ancient, powerful, and deep. Tears streamed down her face as she chanted, voice steady, soul roaring with grief and pain. Afterward, she rolled the earth around her head 3 times and flung it into the air. Done. She returned to her room, silent and cold. 3 days later, the news spread like wildfire. The electricity pole close to Ignatius' compound had collapsed during a storm straight into his house. The house caught fire. Everything burned. Ignatius, Cassia, the cars, the money, the memories, nothing left but ash. Sandra heard the news from a cousin and simply sat in silence. She didn't laugh. She didn't cry. She just closed her eyes. A part of her felt peace, but her heart still throbbed with pain. She whispered into the wind, Kelvin, I hope you are happy wherever you are. Her back leaned against the wall, knees drawn to her chest. Everyone thought the fire brought justice. Everyone thought karma had done its part. But Sandra didn't feel relief, not fully. Instead, what she felt was guilt, the kind that settles deep in your bones, the kind that whispered, you stayed too long. At night, she heard echoes of her own voice. Maybe if I had left earlier, maybe if I had reported him sooner, maybe Kelvin would still be alive. She buried her face in a pillow and screamed, not loud enough to wake the house, but loud enough to release what her heart could no longer carry. This is not just Sandra's story. This is a message, a warning, a truth too many still ignore. Now listen closely. Divorce is okay. Breaking up is okay. Starting over is okay. Moving on is okay. Live so you can live. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed this one. Please don't forget to like, comment and share. See you in the next one. Bye.